Welcome to the Perth Entrepreneur Podcast with me, Neil Gibb, where each week we use the stories and journeys of other successful business owners to motivate, inspire, and empower you to become the next breed of successful entrepreneurs. This week on the show, we continue on with the interview with Pete Bowman. Pete talks about adding value to your business through applying knowledge from mentors, why multiple streams of income is vital in business today, and why constant education and constantly evolving is critical to becoming and staying successful in business.
So it's understanding that the move in the market, but here's what's really interesting, what I'm trying to educate these millennials about. It doesn't just affect them. See, they think the world owes them a job because they got a degree. I said, who told you that? My lecturer did. I said, well, get real. The world doesn't owe you a job. You've got to work out what your value is and how you offer that value to the buyer of your value. And, it's I don't know. I mean, I'm more about going back to, it's really funny. If you go back over 100 years, you go back to pre-1900, 90% of people were employed in their own businesses.
Is that right?
And they were skill-based businesses. Yeah, basically their skill was their business. And it's probably when we went through this period of industrialisation, we started building factories and we reinvented what people became cogs in the machine, so to speak. There was this move away from that very much that craft-based business style, which if you go back to the UK, you think of all the blacksmiths and all of the people that, they were craft-based businesses, small business owners. But I think going forward, you're seeing an evolution going on in terms of what people might have to think about. What skills can I evolve and make valuable to the community? And maybe I collaborate with some other people. I think people have more than one source of income. I'm a real advocate. I've got a colleague of mine who works on a platform and saying, my goal is to help people understand that you can build 10 sources of independent income. I go, how do you do that? He said, you start with one good one. And then you start to diversify the cash flow from that income by positioning yourself strategically to have 8 to 10 sources of income. Now, people, if you start trying to get people's head around that, because they're educated to be an employee, they go, they don't understand that. Well, why do I need 8 or 9 other incomes? Well, if one of them's not working, you're still okay financially.
That's it.
So what this corona thing has really highlighted is how vulnerable lots of people are because they're dependent on one source of income.
Yep. And I was going to ask you, what's the best advice you've ever received in business? And I think you've probably just answered that question there. Do not rely on one source of income.
I was talking to a professional couple the other day that are in the pharmacy industry, and I said my role is to help you understand you need to disconnect your financial flexibility from your skill set. And they're like, what do you mean by that? I said we have to disconnect your source of earnings from the skill set that you sell to the market. And I said, what does that mean? It means we need to get away from you thinking of yourself as a pharmacist. We have to start thinking about you as you incorporated. How do I now create income streams that are not dependent on my skill set as a pharmacist? Now, does that happen overnight? No.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, it doesn't. You're helping people develop an income stream out of the property industry. Okay, that's one example of it. But there are other examples. I know Amazon, for instance. I don't understand their business model necessarily, but for $5,000 you can go and do their course and you can learn how to be an affiliate. You can be an affiliate. You can be an affiliate to a book company and make a commission out of all the books that are sold as a result of that affiliation. If you've got an audience of people who like to read books still, there's lots of ways you can connect. Because what people don't realise is your value is determined by your relationships. Your ability to have a conversation and build a connection with people is more valuable than any educational background you've got.
Your network is your net worth.
Absolutely. Now, if you're going to walk around with your mouth shut all the time and don't reach out and say, I heard this great saying the other day, 50% of the world's just waiting for the other 50% to say hello. And I'm going like, so if I was meeting you, Neil, at an event and we'd never met each other, I'd just walk up and say, "G'day, my name's Pete. What's yours?" And we'd start a conversation.
Yeah.
And not with an outcome, but if you're, you know.
There's definitely that part missing in people nowadays. I think because we're constantly buried our heads in laptops and mobile phones, we forget how simple it is to actually communicate with somebody and just sit down and listen to them, talk to them.
It's really fascinating. I look at a generation of under 30-year-olds. Most of their communication skills are very limited, primarily because all of them have been driven by an interaction on a phone or an iPad. So they don't actually know how to socially interact at all. And yet, as you just said, the value, your net worth is going to be determined by your network. Is that if you don't have an ability to communicate other than sending a text to someone to say, "Hello, how are you? What's your day like?" I just wonder what they're going to be offering to the marketplace. It's like, this is why you're starting to hear a lot of, with all the corona stuff going on, you're hearing a lot more talk about what they call a social wage, which is the ability to level up the playing field. So it's they're doing this in some of the European countries now, where they're, you know, as part of the community, there's what we call a social wage, which is the concern I have is it takes away the ability for people to be aspirational. You know, the people that, you know, people say, "Oh, why do the rich always have so much?" It's just because they've probably done more than you have.
They're educated on how to do it. Yeah. That probably leads me into my next question, because I was going to say, what is wrong with the world today that you want to change? And I think you've answered that question too. It's the communication thing, isn't it? It's
very much so.
Definitely.
I think, and if this will appeal to half the audience, but the other half, I actually think we need, and this is an observation, I personally believe we need more female leadership in the world right now. I think part of the problem we've got is you've got countries being driven by men with big egos and without compassion. And I think that unless we can get women into the higher parts of our political system, I think I just find it very unerring that we've got these, particularly what I see around with the England and the UK and America and other places, even China. You've got a dictator running that country as well. So it's a worry that we don't have enough estrogen in the top ends of both. I think we're seeing it a lot more happening in business, but less so in the political space. And I understand that, because women, if you think about women in the traditional role of having children, that can take them out of the space for a period of time. I can imagine being a political leader. I think it's interesting how a lot of people have been talking about the Prime Minister of New Zealand and the good job that one of the things I'd like to see, and we've got this, and I'm not going to get political, but you've got a guy who's in his early 70s running the US. What would be the possibility of a 30, 40-year-old woman running the United States?
Hopefully it'll happen one day.
It could be useful. Maybe that's controversial.
Donald Trump can get in there. Anybody can.
Well, unfortunately, it's driven by the financial backing that you've got. Right, look, I think what I've seen is, I was reading some stuff about the impact of artificial intelligence over the next 10 to 15 years in Australia. And effectively, they reckon with the speed of technological update, it'll wipe out about 5 million jobs over the next 10 to 15 years. But interesting enough, in the wake of that, there's a whole range of new jobs that are created, right? And here's one of the things that I think we're going to run into. The kids who choose that they decide education's a waste of time, and here I am, not bagging education because it has its place, but here's those kids who fall out of the system of education and advancing their education. I don't know what they're going to do, because the manual career paths that they would have gone into in the past. I'll give you an example. South Australia here, they were driven by Mitsubishi had a motor vehicle plant here. Holden had a motor vehicle plant here. Hundreds and hundreds of people were employed in those industries. How many are employed in those industries today? None. And if you look at the women and guys who lost their jobs, some of them have been there for 20 and 30 years. How do you reskill someone at 55? All they've done is work on a production line. And yet the kids of those workers have probably had aspirations. I'll go and work with the Holden factory like Dad did. And so he didn't think of getting an education.
Mm.
Now they're talking about 20,000 jobs available in the space industry here in South Australia. Well, that's going to require a different level of education for the person to be employed in the space industry.
It's interesting that, actually, because I was listening to a podcast by a guy called Jim Quick. Have you heard of him?
No.
And he said one of the sayings that he had was, "Do not let school get in the way of your education." It's just, it's just there, isn't it? School is there to get you through the system, get you into the system, paying tax, and just support.
Look, I think I think it's an investment in learning. Like if you look around here I've got about probably 300 books here that I've read over the last 20 years. And, some people say to me, oh, the books are repetitive. What I've realised is that if someone else is prepared to share their wisdom in a book, then I've got the ability to learn something from them.
Definitely.
And one of my favourite authors, I know you've asked me about my favourite authors, I've just received 5 books from a guy called John Maxwell. And John Maxwell is probably recognised as probably the leader in leadership development in terms of helping people understand leadership in both business, in not-for-profits, in social and family, the whole range of it. So the book I'm reading at the moment is one called Make Today Count. Great book.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think we've got this thing here. What can we use? How can we evolve it to be more effective?
That's it. And the way you use it and the way you make yourself use it can make all the difference in everything that you do.
Yep.
So, Pete, I want to ask you about mentors and coaches, because you've mentioned that you mentor and coach various people. So who's helped you become the person you are today?
Oh, look, it's weird, isn't it? I think this word mentorship is probably been it's probably been misunderstood. I want to define there's a couple of things I see differently. There's coaching. And I think a lot of people are very familiar with coaching. Coaching is often something that's offered to you with a price tag attached to it, whether it be an hourly basis, a monthly subscription, whatever it might be. Mentorship, to me, what I get from mentorship is often it's an accumulation of wisdom. In that, generally, it's someone whose experience that you're wanting to tap into. They've actually done what you're choosing to do. Like you can be coaching someone in something you've never done. Like I coached a guy in a podiatry business. I got no idea. All I know is he deals with feet. So I have no skill in the particular industry that he's in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I'm coaching him on components that might be applicable to multiple industries, but I actually don't understand anything about podiatry. Whereas in mentorship, I'm seeking that from people who have, I guess, travel the path before me. If there's a forest ahead of me and there's a couple of pathways and one leads to safety and security, one leads to danger, I'm wanting to be kind of handy to have a mentor that could take you down the right pathway.
Absolutely.
So I've been, I was fortunate about 22, 23 years ago to be connected with a couple out of Melbourne. And what I was impressed by was they had some great results on the board, but not just financially. They had amazing, as a couple, they had a really great relationship. And you're married to Joe, no one goes into a relationship wanting it to end, okay? But the reality is, in our country, 50% of them do. And so I'm looking at this couple. So what is it about their relationship how has it been sustained over so many years? And I'm going so I'm looking at it for all the clues and whatever. And I realised communication was that most of the reason couples break up is they don't talk to each other. They've got nothing to talk about, because this is a reality for most of them. They wake up in the morning, they go into a mad scramble to get into whatever rig they need to impress people with for the day. They head off in different directions. They regroup at about 6 o'clock that night, completely knackered after a day of giving themselves to someone else. They then set about producing a meal. The TV goes on, and in about 5 minutes of the evening, they might say, well, how was your day?
True.
And they do that 5 days a week. On Friday night, they replace the soda water and lime with a bottle of red wine, and they try and have a conversation about the week they've just had, which they've hated anyway. And they go well, let's just have a great weekend. And so what I've found is that So I go for bushwalks with my wife, and we spend 75 minutes walking together, no distractions, because that's how we can build a communication.
I think if there is one takeaway from this podcast, it's communication is key, not only to business, but to absolutely everything that we do in life.
Yeah. Well, if you think about everything we do in life is about relationships. What we're doing today is relationship. When you sit down with Joe this afternoon, that's relationship. When you go out and see a potential investor, that's relationship. When you're bringing up kids, that's a relationship. Relationships are everything that we do. It's how we then communicate within those relationships, and we've got multiple ones of them. So for me, when I met Pete and his wife Beth, for me it was looking at their results, but more importantly, how could they help me? And one of the things Pete said to me, and I share this with everyone I talk to, he said, the trap most people that fall into is they define their life by what they do. Okay, so that if I meet someone in a networking environment, I'll say, and I'll go, so what do you do? Because we actually then try and create a picture of that person based on their job description.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he said to me when I met him very early on in life, and he was, this guy is a self-made millionaire at the age of 32 years of age. He's now 61 and has been financially independent for that period of time. So you can learn something from him. But he said to me, here's what most people never learn is how do they want to live their life? And if they spent some time defining how they want to live their life, and then you see at the end of the day, all you then do is create the financial resources and the time resources to be able to live that way. He said, the life would be a whole lot better, wouldn't it? But most people live their life being driven by the Harvey Norman syndrome, which is I haven't got this, I haven't got that. So I'll get into debt. I'll live life in this constant state of never being happy with my existence. I mean, the first thing Pete taught me was delayed gratification. How do you live a life in delayed gratification when we live in a world that's designed to be instantly gratified?
Yep.
Oh, big shift.
Yeah.
I want to do it now. He said, well, what about if you can wait a bit, put it off for a year? But I don't want to, because I've been conditioned to be instantly gratified in everything.
It's an interesting question to ask yourself, isn't it? Really interesting question.
Yeah, and most people, you know what it is? That question, I've been working on that question for 20 years.
So are you still in touch with Pete and Beth now?
Yep, I speak to him probably 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And so, and
mentoring from him.
Yeah, mentoring from him. And the other component of it, which is what we were able to do through a period of getting to know each other, we now partner in business, and so we not only have a mentoring relationship, we have a working business partnership, which is kind of neat as well. So, because I was fascinated because he and his business partners were in that early phase of the online space, and being able to see how you could actually create business in an online environment. So I thought, well, okay, I'm receptive. Mm-hmm. So it's been very good. I think that, I'll give you an example. I've got a mentorship group that I run here with a lot of young crew under the age of 35. We just did a quick calculation yesterday. So how's this? We're not talking about hundreds of people. We're talking probably about 60 to 70 people. And since August last year, so that's 5 months plus a few this back, 8-10 months ago, just through a disciplined approach to debt management and saving money, that small group of people has discharged about 290,000 of crap debt. And the ones who didn't have crap debt, we've encouraged them to save, and they've saved about 40 grand. So in a period of 8 or 9 months, that small group of people have either got rid of debt or saved 330,000. Now our goal over 12 months is $1 million worth of debt cleared out of the system or saved. And here's the debt: car payments. Here's a good one: solar panels with the payment plan, credit cards, weddings. You'd be amazed. If you can buy it, you can finance it.
Yeah. And
what we've been trying to educate them to do is get that debt out of your system, because everyone's wanting to sell you debt. Everyone. Everyone wants to sell you something of debt. Yeah. Here, have some more debt.
So I think more people need access to that type of really simple money management system as well, don't they? Because I went through this exercise myself probably 2 or 3 years ago when we first got into business. And it's at first it's quite scary when you realize how much money it requires to just run your very, very basic life without all the additional takeaways, subscriptions, credit cards, bank loans, car payments, just the base, food, accommodation, and like life insurance and stuff like that. It takes a fair bit of money. So, and it is a liberating experience to go through when you get it all down on paper and physically see it in front of you, because clarity definitely helps.
Look, I don't choose to be the expert. So one of the things I did was I got a hold of a copy of The Barefoot Investor.
Yeah, me too.
Which, you know, from my perspective is, if anyone wants to start, you know, it's really interesting. I talk to people and they go, oh, I just found it really boring. I said, I can't believe your attitude. This guy's giving you principles on how to get your house in order, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've embraced those. You know, I've got 5,000 sitting in a savings account. I've got my fire extinguisher account, blah, blah, blah. It's amazing. You know, we've got money that goes into our travel fund, and, you know, I don't know how many thousands of dollars are sitting there ready to be used on a travel experience. It was really simple.
Yeah.
But people but people think it needs to be hard. No, it's like the simpler it is, the easier it is to embrace it. You know, I go in and sometimes I've got my orange card and go, oh, you read the book. I said, I don't just read the book. I've applied the book. You know, it's
That's
application.
And there's a lot of banks out there now that are actually implementing the systems like the bucket system that Scott talks about in The Barefoot Investor.
Well, they haven't got a choice. I think he's sold nearly 1 million copies of that book. So there's a lot of people who've been educated. And I think that, you know, my first experience with a guy called Robert Kiyosaki was an educational experience, because people criticise him. But here's what's really interesting. He said, my goal is to help the middle class understand that they're getting screwed. He said, the guys at the bottom end of town in the welfare side of things, the government will look after them in a Western-based country, will be looked after. At the top end of town, the 5%ers, mate, they don't give a shit. They've got plenty of dough. They don't pay proportionally. They don't pay a big percentage of their income in tax. It's the 90% that sit in the middle that pay the bulk of the tax in our country. I said, you guys need to understand the game of life, the rules that apply, and you need to. One of the things he said is you need to have your own business at some level, because, you know, I look at all my flights to and from, and you're in the same space. You know, they're all tax deductible for me. I've built my business to be supporting my lifestyle.
That's it. And like you're saying there, a lot of them middle class people that are earning all this money are probably totally unaware of all the tax and everything else that they're paying that they could be saving if they were set up in the correct type of structure.
Absolutely. So I think that, you know, it's I think people need to explore the learning process. Look, I don't care how many books you read. I read about 20 a year. You know, one a month, 1.5 books a month. And most people I run into haven't read a book since they left school, and barely did they read a book when they were there. So, you know, and books aren't just written for you to buy them. One of the things I learned is if you buy a book, so when I talk to people about mentorship, I talk about two components. I can add some fuel to that, but you've got to take a personal responsibility for it as well. So mentorship isn't about me just being the platform that they come to with every question. So if you came to me with a question, if I was mentoring you right now and you said, well, Pete, what do you think about this? I said, you know what's more important? What do you think about that? Because I'm more interested in the intellectual process you've gone through rather than coming to me seeking my answer to your question. What's the intellectual wraparound you've done on that question? So someone might come to you and say, Neil, how am I going to fund this particular project, this property project? And you might turn around and say, so Pete, right now, how do you think you're going to fund it? Well, I've done this, and get them to, because you've got to have, to be a really good mentor, you've got to have some intellectual transfer, all right? Otherwise, you become just like a school teacher, one-way traffic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it stops them from thinking too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think we've got this thunking society that doesn't thunk much at all. Because you know what it is? You know what we've created, and it's really, really dangerous, is we've created a community, and I watch it in our young guys, our teenagers here. No one wants to take responsibility. No one. And so because they want someone else to be the fool guy, or they don't want to take on that responsibility themselves. And we've got this, what I call now, an irresponsible society.
It's true.
No one wants to take it.
Very true. So we were just touching on the concept of books there and the amount of books you read, and I generally like to wrap up the end of the podcast with these few quick fire questions.
Yeah, fire away.
What's your 3 favorite books that have made a big difference in your life? I think I know what they are. I think I know one of them anyway.
What's that one?
Cash Flow Quadrant.
Yeah, massive difference. I think the thing why it was important to me was really to understand what, and people don't get the difference between an asset and a liability. I think if I got nothing more out of the book was an understanding of an asset and a liability, right? Here's what I'd grown up believing. The home that I lived in was an asset. And when I read the book, he said, it is an asset, but it's an asset to the bank who's loaned you the money to finance the property. Why? Because the definition of an asset is, does it produce an income for you? And I realised that what he was trying to tell me, my actual house that I lived in was a liability, not an asset. It was an asset to the bank because it produced an income for the bank. Interesting phraseology there. So I think it was a really powerful book. Oh, bingo. I was just looking here. I've just finished reading an awesome book, which is one of my favourite authors. It's called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by a guy called John Maxwell. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard for me to differentiate. I've just read another one of his books called Failing Forward. And one of the things that I was really impressed about with the book Failing Forward was increasing our capacity to fail. So not looking at life as a journey of success, but looking at it as a life of failing and making mistakes. Mm-hmm. And what he was trying to help me understand was you learn more from what you do wrong than what you do right.
Correct.
Because where's the learning in something you do right?
Yeah, exactly.
You learn from your failings and your mistakes. And I'm actually call it my cock-up factor, if you can use it. I'm actually encouraging myself to make more mistakes.
So you can learn more.
Because I'm having a go at more things then. I'm not being held back by not having a crack at it. So I was just trying to think what else. I mean, so Cash Flow Quadrant. I was just trying to think what I've read recently. That's always a good question because I've read so many books, and I'm trying to pick out one that would be distinctive. I read this book. Let's see if I can pick it up. Oh, there's another one here. You Can Win in the Locker Room, which was You Can Win in the Locker Room First, which was a really cool book as well. So part of the mentorship environment that developed, we've got about 30 books that we have in our recommended reading list. And, that for most people, that's probably about 2 to 3 years of reading, at a pace of about 10 to 15 pages a day. Mm-hmm. And I just encourage people to do more of that. For me, I still have time to read the newspaper, but on top of that, I've already read my 30 minutes this morning before I spoke with you. So I don't know if that helps. I could take a screenshot of my books and you could...
It's actually really easy to fit that 30 minutes of reading in as well.
Yeah. There's a book that's come out that I'm about to read, which is very, very popular right now, called Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
By James. I get his newsletter every week. It's fantastic. What it is in all of these things, it's having the discipline to actually maintain the focus of doing it on a daily basis. Actually, I should share that one of my favourite books is a book called The Slight Edge. And The Slight Edge is another similar book called The Compound Effect. It talks about the little tiny things we do each day. We don't think they're that important, but at the end of a week, a month, or a year, they add up being really important. I'll give you an example of this. If I eat a muffin every day for 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, it's fair to say, without good management on my exercise programs, I'm going to probably put on about 5 kilos. And yet when I bite into that muffin that's dripping with sugar and all the lovely things they put in it and the topping and all that, I'm probably not looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
Because I'm really enjoying it. The compound effect of enjoying that every single day for the rest of this year is that I'll probably put on 5 kilos. Mm. And it's the same discipline with money. I don't know whether you've ever heard that great analogy of doubling a penny every day, or just taking, if I gave the offer of $1 million now in a cash payment, or doubling 1 cent every day for 30 days, most people would take the $1 million today. And yet the 1 cent doubled every day over 30 days comes in at about 30 or 40 million.
Right.
And what it tells me is people haven't got the patience to wait for the results to actually happen.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, Pete, when you do get back to Perth, which hopefully won't be too far away, mate, we'll get to catch up for a coffee. What's your best place to eat in Perth?
Pete Bowman's favourite restaurant?
Yeah.
Look, that's a really good question, isn't it? Like, it's. I was hoping you were going to take me to that restaurant that I've never eaten at before.
I like to ask this question in case any sort of hidden gems pop up that I'm unaware of.
Look, I'm like, for something completely different. And I must admit, every time I go there, I love the experience. It's not because I'm a vegetarian, but I've been to the Raw Kitchen multiple times down in Fremantle.
Yeah.
And it's a completely vegetarian, vegan type experience. And I'm not a vegetarian, but I love to enjoy the way in which someone has taken out what I would traditionally eat and made an amazing meal.
It's tasty, isn't
it? That's why instinctively, that's why I remember it so much, because I'm thinking, how did you do that pizza base using almonds as your ingredient? Like, does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think one of the things we need to do is when we get all this out, we need to go out and support our restaurant community, because they've been the ones that, have been the hardest hit by this whole thing. It's I think they said there's about 450,000 workers have lost their source of income as a result of this whole thing through the restaurant and hospitality industry. So, if we can do nothing more, one of the great things, of course, is that, there'll be real restrictions on us flying internationally. So in a way, we've created this internal economic story that if we spend our money in our own country for the next 12 to 18 months, it'll have a compound effect on those businesses that have probably really got smacked around.
Yeah, hopefully, mate. We've already got our eye on a restaurant to go to on Monday night when everything opens back up. So
excellent.
Support local businesses, keep it real.
I think that's really important that we do that. I mean, look, you might pay a little bit more occasionally to do this, but go out of your way to spend some money with some businesses that are on the small to medium size. It's okay to go and spend your money at Woolies and whatever, but maybe why not support the local IGA? That's usually owned by a family or something like that. You might pay a few dollars extra for your bag of goodies, but you're going to help keep those businesses ticking along. And it's maybe from time to time change your coffee shop. Maybe there's another coffee shop you can go to. I've got 3 that I try to spread my money with so that they all survive, if that makes sense. So I don't think it hurts to spread our resources around.
Excellent. Well, look, Pete, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll hopefully catch up again soon.
We will. It's your buy next time too, by the way.
Thanks. See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to the Perth Entrepreneur Podcast with me, Neil Gibb. Please hit the subscribe button and leave me a review so that I know that I'm delivering the content that you want to hear. You can connect with me on Facebook, the Perth Entrepreneur Podcast, Instagram, Neil Gibb Pep Talk, and YouTube, Neil Gibb Perth Entrepreneur.